very tempted to, I had a reading from Silver Birch, whom I love very much. But a couple of weekends ago, I was out in Chilliwack and I attended the Rotary book sale, which my great friend Rosemary Moskell dragged me to. And it is a huge sale. It's the largest book sale I've ever seen in my life. And I've been a couple of times in the past. And I picked up a book which really caught my eye, and it's called The Rules of Life. And it's written by Richard Templar. And it's simply a series of rules which this gentleman has come up with over the course of his life. And one of them really stood out to me, and it's rule number 24. And it's called, leave a little space for yourself each day. Most people think they get this, but most people could be wrong. You may think you have a little quality time each day for yourself and others, but I bet you don't. You see, even in our time alone, we spend so much of it worrying about others, caring for our family, our friends, our pets, work, and the loved ones that there is very little left over entirely for ourselves. What I am proposing isn't revolutionary or difficult or extreme. In fact, it's really pretty easy. Just leave a little space for yourself each day, perhaps 10 minutes, but ideally as much as half an hour, perhaps. This is time put aside and devoted entirely for yourself. Selfish? You bet. Of course it is, and justifiably so. You are the captain, the engine, the driving force, the motivator, the rock. You need that time to regenerate, renew, invigorate yourself. You need that downtime to recharge and repair. If you don't, you aren't taking on fresh fuel. Your engine will run down, and so will you. So what are you going to do with that time? Answer: absolutely nothing. And I mean nothing. This isn't time for lying in the bath, sitting on the toilet, meditating, reading the newspaper, checking your emails, or sleeping. This is a little space for you, a breather, a time to sit still and do absolutely nothing. Just breathe. I find 10 minutes sitting in the garden, just breathing, is a fantastic boost a couple of times a day. I sit there, not thinking, not doing, not worrying, just being, while appreciating the pleasure of being alive. I discovered this rule when I was a teenager. I found it invaluable as a way of purging myself of angst and worries. My mother used to call out to me, "What are you doing?" To which the reply was inevitably, "Nothing." And she would always reply, "Well, come in here and I'll find you something to do." She used to say, "You'll never amount to anything by having your head stuck in a book." And the one I loved the most, "No one needs to think as much as you do." How do you answer that? I find time spent doing nothing really important. And as soon as I complicate it, it loses something. If I add a cup of coffee to my solitude, then it's a coffee break and not a space just for me. If I listen to music, then it's a music break If I have a companion with me and I chat, then it's a social occasion. If I read the papers or look at my computer messages, then I have moved away entirely from the concept of a little space for me. Keep it simple. Keep it bare. Keep it pure. Keep this firmly in your mind. This is totally a little space just for yourself while you do absolutely nothing. Thank you for listening. Thank you for that song, Melba. I know sometimes technical difficulties can really throw us for a loop, but you know, the essence of John Denver's song was there. Perhaps love is like a resting place. And as I was listening to that music, and we haven't played perhaps love, I think, for quite some time, perhaps since we left our center, Spirit said to me, that little space that you were talking about, that little breather that you spoke of, that 10 minutes perhaps a day, if we can manage it. We're not supposed to be thinking. We're not supposed to be worrying, absolutely. But Spirit has just said to me, instead of not doing anything, just fill your mind for 10 minutes with love. Now, we're well aware, or most of us aware, that the color of love is pink. And so if, as you're entering into that little space of time for you, if you just fill your mind with the color of pink, that's all you need to do. Because pink is the healing color of love. And if that's all we do, then we are accomplishing what we actually came here to do. Why we're here in this life. Why we're here to live. And that is to be little vehicles of love. Now, Leslie made a comment, and I think all of us probably thought this, oh, I'll have to think about this, because many of us think we do have that time spent alone. We do give ourselves time, but do we? I loved what Richard Templar said about if we are alone, we're worrying about the family. We're thinking about, do we need to take the dog out? Have we watered the garden? Did I turn off the kettle if it isn't an automatic one? Gosh, did I leave the alarm on? All of these things flow through our minds, but that's not really giving us, ourselves, our inner selves, that break, that little space of time where we just need to sit and breathe. I loved what this gentleman said about sitting in the garden for 10 minutes. And maybe had I read this story or this rule 24, a little earlier in the summer, I may have been able to sit out in my garden. And now that the rains have come, I'll have to sit in my living room instead. But it's worth thinking about, everyone. It really is worth giving it some thought. You see, each and every one of us are very precious. Why are we precious? Because we each have divinity within us. Each and every one of us have that spark of the divine within us. That is what sets us apart from any other creature on the planet. We have the awareness of our divinity. And in our very, very busy lives, in which we are all wrapped up in each and every day, even for those that aren't working, we're still very busy in our lives. We tend to forget and tend to lose track of who are we? What are we? Now, we're very aware of the physical side of ourselves. We're very aware of our partners, if we work, what we do with our work, getting to work, spending time with family, cooking, doing the housework, keeping the house going, or the apartment or the condominium, whatever it is you may live in. That takes a lot of energy, but a lot of that is physical. It's physical thinking about what I need to do next. But I feel very strongly this gentleman is talking about a little space we set aside where we connect with whom we are, and we connect through just breathing. Now, we're very aware of this if we meditate, that we meditate on the breath, absolutely. But this is not meditating. This is just sitting quietly. Now, are we able to clear our minds? Never. We know that. But we can just sit there. Whatever filters through our mind, just let it go and let it carry on. Don't dwell on it. Just let it float by. And that 10 minutes with your breathing will go very, very quickly. You can turn off your cell phone, unplug the landline if that's what you want to do. Turn off the TV, turn off the music. It's just that little space for you. Because, you know, as I said a little earlier, you are precious. And the Great Spirit of all life knows how precious you are because you're part of that Great Spirit of all life. And this can be a little time just to recharge and perhaps reconnect in love. We know that the Great Spirit is the embodiment of all love. And for many of us, myself very much so, we find that a very hard concept to understand and take on board. Why? Because we're three-dimensional. We know the spirit world is at 5 dimensions and above. And when you're multi-dimensional, things happen and are able to happen outside of our realm. But we can try in our own limited earthly way. We can try for ourselves, just briefly, to say, I love you. But when you're saying I love you, you're talking about yourself. I love you. I love me. Why? Because when we say I love me or I love you, you're referring to your connection to this great source. And as that great source is everything in love, we immediately make a connection to that. Now, we know that our energy is given to us by the beautiful sun. We get energy from Mother Earth. We get a lot of energy from the food we eat, from the exercise that we undertake, or whatever we're doing. But let us not forget that we're actually fed by this universal energy. That's what tops us up. That's what truly gives us animation and life and sustenance. When we think of life, we can think of God. Or if we don't want to use the word God, just call God life. And we are the embodiment of life. And everything around us, from the homes and apartments that we live in, to the trees and the beautiful flowers and the grass and the animals and the pets and the wild animals, the clouds, the sea, the rivers, everything is this energy. Everything is this vast energy of which we are part of too. But when we go into this little space, just for a very short time, we reconnect with that energy, and we reconnect through our breath. Breath is what gives us life. It's what brings in the oxygen into our lungs. And without that, we don't live very long. But we are talking about living. We're talking about living on planet Earth. And is it easy? Of course it isn't easy. All that's going on every day in the news is filled with controversy, gloom, doom, and all of the aspects of war and suffering. But that is part of our life. But the other part involves us directly. It involves us as living, breathing beings. And can we make a difference in our lives? Of course we can. We can make a difference in our thinking by sending out loving thoughts, helpful thoughts, positive thoughts to our planet and to those around us. And that does have an effect on the planet that we live on. We may not see it, hear it, feel it, but it has an effect. Why? Because thoughts are energy. We are energy. And when we send that energy out, it resonates around the world. Our world is made of energy. All the doom and gloom and everything that's happening in our world is energy. But we can make a difference. But to make that difference, we have to feel well, feel alive, be animated, feel as though we count, that we really can stand up for what we believe in, because we have the energy to do it. But to keep that energy, we need to keep regenerating and revigorating ourselves, as Richard Templar told us about. We know a lot of people who suffer from depression, who suffer from anxiety, who suffer from lack of self-worth. And maybe each and every one of us have gone through those periods in our life. And it's a very, very difficult time. Very. But we can help them. But in helping them, we're helping ourselves. Don't ever forget you. Don't put you aside, because you are vitally important to be that channel, that instrument, to send that energy out in a positive, loving way. Now, there are times when we don't feel very energetic. We don't feel very loving. We feel angry. We feel frustrated. And that's part of the human condition. Absolutely. But I read a beautiful post this morning from Mari Davies, who's a wonderful medium from England, who I have studied under, and she's visited Vancouver. And she moved 6 months ago. Mari moved 6 months ago, and she's had a lot of very difficult health problems. And she was saying on this post this morning that at some of the lowest time in her life, people would either text her or email her, "I need healing, I need help, can you send it?" And she relayed how she was feeling and how difficult she thought it would be. But simply by turning this over to a source much greater than ourselves, the healing went out. She was the vehicle to send the healing out, God's healing out. And every one of them replied back, "Oh, I feel so much better. Thank you for your healing." All she did was be the instrument. Now, Mari is now feeling better. Every time she received this email back, she felt more uplifted. So when we think that we're feeling really low, really out of sorts with ourselves, step back and just say, okay, this is how I'm feeling, but what have I got to be grateful for? And if the only thing you can think of is that I'm alive, then that is worth saying and having gratitude for. But we are more than just alive. We live in the most beautiful country in the whole world. Even though this wasn't my original country, I love Canada. And I know all of you do too. And that lovely couple from Scotland, I've been to Scotland, I love Scotland. It's a beautiful country. The world is a beautiful place. And how do we see it? Either with the glass half full or the glass half empty. We don't deny terrible things are happening in our world, but we also mustn't deny the fact that we live and are beautiful beings in a beautiful part of the world that can make a difference. And to make that difference, we need to be in a space, a mental space, a physical space, an emotional space where we feel I can make a difference. But to get to that space, to be in that wonderful place that you feel, I feel good, I feel alive, I feel well, I feel blessed, we've got to be in that space. And what this gentleman was telling each of us is, this is a little way of doing it. Even if it's for 5 minutes, it doesn't matter. It's just time for you. And in that time, even if it's 5 minutes, bring love into your mind and realize you are this vehicle of love. Even if you're feeling rotten inside and just feel crummy inside, it doesn't matter. Because when we evoke and send out these elements of love, automatically our energy changes. Our whole countenance and our whole being changes, because we've brought in a positive aspect into a life and not a negative one. And that's what's so important to us, to try and keep positive. Even when the skies are dark and gloomy and it's raining and windy and cold, there's a reason for it. We live in a country a long way from the equator. So if we're prepared to live in Canada and we're prepared to live in Scotland, we know it's going to be colder than living in Jamaica or Hawaii or Tahiti. That's a given. But that doesn't make us any less able to help and be the vehicle. So take those little times aside. Just 2 minutes. Sit on the side of the bed and just breathe. Just for you. You that is so important to our world. And when I see all of you on screen and I feel the love that you send, it is a beautiful thing. And it uplifts me, as I know it uplifts all of you. Are we the instigator of all of these messages and all of this love? No. But we are the vehicle, the person, the personality to bring it through. This great source can't work on its own. It can only work through something. And very importantly, that something is someone, and that someone is you and I. And that's what we've got to remember. We can make a difference. We can help where we can, when we can. And that's all. We don't have to climb Everest. We don't have to go to space. We just need to be us, be genuine you. And when you are, you make a difference. But to keep being in that space of making a difference, we have to be well. And that's why it's so important we take time for us, ourselves. Be selfish. And just think of you, just for a few minutes every day. And I know you will feel better. You will feel recharged. You will feel reconnected. And in doing that, you will make a difference in our world today. Thank you for listening.